At this point, we've had a bunch of comic book movies that feature a group of unlikely heroes that have to join forces. And now we have another one from Marvel Studios, Thunderbolts, or The New Avengers. The movie is directed by Jake Schreier, and it's about a group of imperfect anti-heroes who we've come to know over the course of different MCU projects as they band together to face a common threat. This is a darker MCU movie on a thematic level, while also managing to have some strong comedic moments with its characters. The lineup of characters we get in this movie includes Yelena Belova, Bucky Barnes, Red Guardian, John Walker, Ghost, Taskmaster, and Bob. Overall, this is a good selection of characters. Generally speaking, they have distinct enough personalities, and there are characters on this team that I found interesting in their other appearances, and I'm glad that this movie further fleshes them out. One character this movie doesn't do a good job of fleshing out is Taskmaster, but I'll get more into that later. This may not be the most well-rounded group of characters in the sense that all the members have a diverse array of abilities, but that actually makes it more interesting to see how they have to work together to overcome obstacles. The dialogue and character interactions in this movie are really enjoyable and make for some strong comedic moments. Is every comedic moment absolutely hilarious? No, but a lot of the humor in this movie works well. The characters have moments where their personalities clash and they try to get on the same page, and it's all pretty entertaining to watch. Now I want to get more into the characters. The movie showcases the dark and troubled pasts that a lot of these characters have, and how they're still affected by them now. Yelena Belova, played by Florence Pugh, is essentially the lead character of this movie, and she's a pretty good one. We see how her past in the Black Widow program, along with the loss of her sister, Natasha, continued to have an effect on her. And seeing Yelena try to attempt to navigate her path forward despite everything that's happened is intriguing to watch. And what helps make Yelena a likable character is the performance by Florence Pugh. She brings a lot of likability to the role, she helps give the character a witty personality, and she makes her feel down to earth. Yelena and other members of the team have done bad things, but through this movie we see them try to be better, even when the odds are stacked against them and people don't believe in them. And it really makes this an underdog story, which I found really entertaining. A character I really like in this movie is Alexei, also known as Red Guardian, played by David Harbour. His goofy comedic moments and his desire to be a hero make him fun to watch. The dynamic that Yelena and Alexei have is a highlight of the movie. They don't have the ideal father-daughter relationship, but you can tell that there's definitely love there. And Alexei being the embarrassing dad to Yelena is pretty fun to watch. And it just makes the characters more relatable. Ava, also known as Ghost, played by Hannah John Kamen, returns after first appearing in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I found the character entertaining in that movie, but they didn't flesh her out enough. I always felt that the character had a lot more potential, so I'm glad that she returned in this movie and they further fleshed her out. Her ability to phase through matter makes for some cool visuals, and I think she plays off of Yelena and John Walker pretty well. But even in this movie, I think she could have gotten a bit more spotlight. She's not as fleshed out as some other characters in this movie, but I still enjoyed her character. Bucky Barnes, played by Sebastian Stan, is a great character, has been a staple to the MCU for many years now, and I always like seeing him show up in these movies. He has some entertaining moments in this movie, like when he shows up on his bike in the desert to rescue the team. But similar to Ava, I would have liked it if Bucky had a bit more spotlight in this movie. And that's because with Bucky's traumatic past, it would have made more sense to have him be a bit more of a focus, considering this movie has a focus on mental health. But at the same time, Bucky's been plenty fleshed out in other MCU projects, so it's not a big deal. It's interesting that they made Bucky a congressman. He's not the type of character I would have expected to run for a political position. It's kind of fun to see him out of his element, but overall, I think this story decision is a bit too out of place, even if the movie is self-aware about it. I also really enjoyed John Walker in this movie, played by Wyatt Russell. Initially, he's a jerk, but as the movie goes on, they flesh out the character more and they make him more three-dimensional. You see how his past, specifically how the events that he was involved in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, continue to affect him. John is definitely a flawed character, but as the movie goes on, he becomes a character that's more humanized, and he becomes a character I can root for. Bob is a character that's utilized very well in the movie. The movie uses him to tackle some darker themes, and it does so successfully. Lewis Pullman is really good as the character. The character has some awkward and comedic moments, as well as some darker and more serious moments, and Lewis Pullman does a good job with those moments. Valentina, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, has a bit of an eccentric personality, she has some comedic dialogue, but the character is also involved in some shady activities, so there's an interesting contrast there. And this also makes Valentina a unique antagonist in the MCU. I also like Julie Louis-Dreyfus in the role. She does a good job with the comedic moments, and she has good chemistry with Geraldine Viswanathan, who plays Mel. Mel is the more level-headed one, and it's fun to see her bring a dry sense of humor in response to Valentina's personality. And I also really enjoy the action in this movie. The characters utilize their abilities and skills in some eye-catching ways. Because of the nature of most of these characters, they don't have a variety of crazy superpowers, it provides the opportunity for this movie to have action that has a bit more grit, and it's action that's a bit more immersive, and it's all very engaging to watch. If the movie used some unnecessary CGI, I couldn't tell because these fight scenes looked pretty good. But the action isn't always at the forefront of this movie. There are parts of this movie that focus more on the mental states of these characters, as well as their internal conflicts, and the way that they try to get on the same page. And it's all very entertaining. The final fight of the movie is great. It's not just a traditional physical fight. It acts as one of the most powerful moments in the movie, and it also intertwines its darker themes involving mental health. And I'll get more into it in the spoiler section. Overall, this movie just has a really unique feel to it compared to a lot of other MCU movies, especially a lot of the more recent ones. The world in this movie feels a bit smaller, feels a little bit more tangible, and it has that phase 1 and 2 magic. And I like how the movie doesn't seem to use unnecessary green screens, the lighting isn't overblown, and for the most part, this movie focuses on telling its own story. And these are not comments I can make about every more recent MCU movie. This is another MCU movie that's able to really stand out on its own. Obviously, a lot of these movies feel similar to one another, they all share elements, but a lot of these movies, not all of them, feel like they have identities of their own. In terms of any other thoughts I have before I get into spoilers, the pacing is pretty good. I was consistently entertained throughout the movie's runtime. The score for this movie is also enjoyable. Specifically, I like the music that plays when Bucky shows up on his bike. The track being titled It's Bucky, and it helps make the scene more exciting and motivating. Okay, now I'm going to talk about spoilers. Starting off, I want to talk a bit more about Yelena. I really like Yelena's story in this movie. Throughout the movie, we see how uncontent she is with her life, and how she's not proud of working for Valentina. Not only that, but she still has to deal with her sister's death. But on top of all of that, we see how she has to deal with childhood trauma. We see a flashback of her in the Black Widow program as a kid, where she had to lead another girl to her death. You can tell that Yelena has a good heart, but she feels really remorseful over the things that she's had to do. We also see how John Walker is affected by losing the mantle of Captain America. He ended up neglecting his family, which led his wife to leave and take their son. And then there's Alexei, who's become depressed because of the lack of fulfillment he feels in life. He really just wants to be a hero. He wants to have purpose. The movie makes me sympathize with the team, so when they're named the New Avengers, it's rewarding to watch. This team has gone through some pretty messed up stuff, but they have brighter futures ahead of them. So it really makes for a good underdog story. I also want to talk a bit more about the team bonding in this movie. Most of the team meets for the first time at the Ox Vault, as they were all sent on missions to take each other out. These are all people that have previously worked for Valentina to do her dirty work, and now she wants all evidence destroyed because she's in jeopardy of being impeached as the director of the CIA. At first, all of these characters want to kill each other, but they realize what's going on, so then they're forced to work together. Not only is it cool to see them fight each other and use their abilities, but the dialogue between Yelena, Ava, and John Walker is pretty fun. Yelena and Ava reacting to Walker's personality makes for some decent comedic moments because of how much of a jerk Walker can be at times. Valentina is like the anti-Nick Fury. It's not her intention to bring these characters together to form a team. They form a team after she tries to kill them, and then they go up against her. So that's a fun thing to think about. Also, Taskmaster is in this scene. It's interesting because the marketing for this movie made it seem like Taskmaster was gonna die or something. And she does. Yeah, she gets shot in the head by Ghost. She dies. I was expecting her to die, but not in the first occurrence where the group meets. I was not expecting that. From what I understand, there was a different version of the script where she played a larger role, but for some reason that was changed. I have to ask, why was she even in the movie? After she dies, she doesn't really leave much of an impact on the rest of the group. She's talked about briefly in a conversation between Ava and Yelena, but beyond that, she's pretty much forgotten about. I can't say that I was ever a fan of Taskmaster in the MCU because I never really found her to be an interesting character. But this movie could have changed that. They could have given her a stronger story, and they could have given Olga Kurylenko more to do. But instead, they kill her off immediately. This movie does a good job of fleshing out its characters, but Taskmaster is not one of them. Now let's talk about the Sentry. Robert Bob Reynolds was a test subject for Valentina's Sentry project, and he was thought to be dead, which is why he was left in the Ox Vault to be incinerated. But he survived, which means the Sentry project was a success. Throughout the movie, we learn more about the character's past. We learn about his addiction and his troubled home life. This all makes him a more three-dimensional and unique character. The fact that Bob is initially okay with staying back in the Ox Vault when everything is about to be incinerated is dark. It's interesting that Marvel actually goes there with this movie. But seeing Yelena motivate Bob to not give up is a nice moment. Bob eventually joins forces with Valentina and officially becomes the Sentry, and he takes on the Thunderbolts in a fight. In his fight with the Thunderbolts, the Sentry seems to be holding back, otherwise he probably would have destroyed them. The way he bends Walker's shield makes for a cool visual. The same goes for him ripping off Bucky's arm and hitting him with it. I also like the moment where he throws Alexei out the window and then brings him back. That was a fun moment. It's going to be interesting to see how they depict him going forward in the MCU. It's going to be interesting to see how powerful they actually make the Sentry. He's going to be in Avengers Doomsday, so I'm excited to see how he's handled in that movie. Eventually he goes rogue and he turns against Valentina. And then the Void takes over, which is this dark entity, and Bob loses all control as the Void starts to take over New York. The way that the Void is depicted as an entity in this movie is really cool. I really like the reveal of the Void floating in midair. It's visually striking, it's mysterious, and it's unlike anything we've seen in the MCU. In the final act of the movie, the team enters the Void to go save Bob and New York. And the inside of the Void is very interesting. It's like this madhouse of despair where people are forced to relive their painful memories. Yelena enters the Void and she's also forced to relive her past, specifically the moment where she leads another girl to her death. But she eventually finds Bob and he's sitting alone in a room trying to hide from all his painful memories. But we do get a glimpse at one of them. It involves his abusive father. And this just fleshes out Bob's story even more and makes him a more tragic character. Flash forward to later in the Void, after the Thunderbolts find him, there's a moment where we see Bob try to fight the Void, but it doesn't seem to be working, and instead Bob begins to be engulfed in it. And this is a great moment that really shows how people can just be overwhelmed with darker emotions. We see how determined Bob is to destroy the Void after it's caused him so much mental anguish. And then we see the Thunderbolts break free from their restraints, and then they help pull Bob away. I think this is a great moment that shows the power that people have to help others when they're facing darker times. This is one of the most powerful moments in the movie. And the scene is also elevated with some great emotional music. Overall, Bob's inclusion in this movie really helps elevate the theme of mental health. And it really helps set this movie apart from other MCU movies. Another strong emotional moment is a scene with Yelena and Alexei. It's the scene where she tells him that she feels alone and she feels very remorseful over the things that she's done. As someone invested in these characters, it was nice to see them let out their emotions. This was just a great emotional scene that was pretty cathartic. Like I mentioned earlier, at the end of this movie, this team gets named the New Avengers. Earlier in the movie, Valentina's plan includes having the Sentry take down the Thunderbolts to make him look like a hero. This is for her own personal gain and to prevent herself from getting impeached, to make herself look good in the media, and to make her Sentry project look like a success. But after Bob goes rogue and the Void takes over, that plan is pretty much destroyed. But then Valentina sees the Thunderbolts help New York, and they work together as a team, and then she gets the idea of using them instead. So the movie ends with her crowning this team the New Avengers in front of a crowd of people. So yeah, this is our New Avengers team. It's definitely interesting that Marvel chose to go this route with the Avengers. But honestly, I like it because I like this team and this is a pretty good underdog story. And them being the New Avengers shows how people with flawed pasts and people who are undermined can actually work together and beat the odds and become something better. And not to mention, this team has really good chemistry, they're fun to watch together. So yeah, I'm on board with this team being the New Avengers. The mid-credit scene is decent, but it's basically a Wheaties ad. It has Alexei in the grocery store, and he's relishing the fact that his face is on a cereal box and that he's now an Avenger. It's a funny scene, but it's nothing amazing. The post-credit scene is much more of a talking point. There's a 14-month time jump, and the new Avengers are in their new outfits, and they're working out of Avengers Tower. And we hear that there's some tension between Bucky and Sam Wilson. Sam is not a fan of this team using the Avengers name, and now there seems to be some kind of rift between him and Bucky. I'm definitely curious to see how that plays out in future movies. Are we gonna get another Civil War situation? I don't know. The post-credit scene also has some comedic moments. For example, Alexei walks in with his ridiculous Avengers outfit, and it also has a Z instead of an S so they can avoid legal issues. It's a decent comedic bit. But then there's mention of a space crisis, and the team gets wind of a spaceship approaching Earth. They view the satellite image, they zoom in, and then we see the Fantastic Four logo. And this is definitely a cool tease, and it basically confirms that the team is going to leave their Earth by the end of the Fantastic Four First Steps. And this is a cool scene. I wish it wasn't spoiled by the actual credits of the movie, because I was waiting for the post-credit scene, and I was looking at the credits, and I was like, the Fantastic Four First Steps theme by Michael Giacchino, that wasn't in the movie. And then I was like, okay, I guess that's the post-credit scene. So it's kind of funny that it was spoiled by the actual movie for me. Anyway, I'm pretty excited for the Fantastic Four First Steps. A lot of us have been waiting a long time to finally see these characters done justice, so hopefully this movie is great. This is a pretty good post-credit scene. It's nothing amazing because we knew the Fantastic Four were coming, but it's still cool because it makes their arrival feel closer. I like how during the mid-credits, as well as the post-credit scene, Marvel is self-aware about the type of discourse that making this team the new Avengers will cause. You see all these news article headlines, and they're pretty reminiscent to ones that you would actually see in real life. So that's fun. Also, the Marvel Studios intro for this movie is great. It was nice to see them use a variation of the comic book intro once again, but this time with a twist. We see all these comic book pages of the century, and then the whole Marvel logo just gets engulfed in darkness, representing the void taking over. I would say it's definitely one of the more memorable MCU intros. Overall, this is one of the best MCU movies of the past few years. It has a lot of weight, it has emotional moments, but it also has its share of funny moments and good banter between characters. This movie has elements that remind me of Phase 1 and 2 of Marvel, and elements that just make it more tangible. So tell me what you think about Thunderbolts or the new Avengers in the comments section, and make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.